Hello, this is Deadman Walking. This video will discuss bug out scenarios. So when you hear the word bug out, a lot of people think, oh, it's the end of the world, it's the apocalypse. But actually it can be distinguished into maybe two sections. For this video, it will be two. So it'll be a small scale recoverable disaster and a large scale disaster. So for the small scale or recoverable disasters, you could have blackout, so electrical blackout, which could obviously stop power in your building. So you may need to. You could either stay in or you need to bug out. If you're bugging out, you might have a small bag of things, maybe for a couple of days, or probably only just one day, and or a gas leak, which might be similar sort of principle to a blackout, but obviously you're gonna be waiting around and however long the engineers come to fix it, or if you fix it yourself, that's great. A fire is another thing, although you may think it's not recoverable if it burns your entire house down. I put this into the smaller category due to the perspective of the other events placed in there. Same with floods. This may cause you to bug out, so you may not be able to return home. You may be lucky enough to return home, but you would still have a small bag, or maybe a few bags for your car. You'd fill that with items, which maybe a few valuables, photographs, but you'd still carry things in there, clothes, food, maybe stuff to cook the food in, to in exchange to help you live. Not maybe not survive as such, because civilization is still around in these instances, but it would definitely make it easier for you to live. So moving up to the next, the large scale events. These are things which nobody wants. Nobody wants the first things, but these are nasty. So we'll go on to infection. This is just a selection of things. So now what the infection might be an epidemic, which is localized, isolated to either a few areas or maybe just the entire country, like the Ebola outbreak in 2014. So then there's the pandemic, which is a global outbreak. Such as the Black Death or the Spanish flu at the end of the First World War, which vastly increased casualties in that era. You could even, if you were fictional, the zombie apocalypse would fit under this global pandemic as such. Next, we're going to look at the natural disasters. So this might include earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, and floods again. Although I said about small scale for floods, they could also be large scale, such as if they're in LEDCs or less economically developed countries. So that would seriously affect them because they might not have the finances or the medical care to operate with the same efficiency as MEDCs or more economically developed countries to cope with these natural disasters. Obviously, the volcanoes and tsunamis and earthquakes will always be devastating, but some countries are just more equipped and have more money to deal with these things. Volcanoes is an interesting one because the supervolcano in Yellowstone, that people theorize that if that goes, then it'll block out the sun, which is true. It will stop the sun's rays to come through, but it won't be like the Icelandic volcano in 2010. That was caused large amount of panic because the ash would prevent planes air control from flowing, because the ash would get sucked into the jet engines. But if Yellowstone went up, we wouldn't be able to grow anything. That would decrease humanity's chances of survival. And it's been proven before that in scientific papers that when volcanoes go up, the Earth's experience cooling. So we haven't had a major eruption for around 20 years, so nobody really knows what a supervolcano will be like to see that go up. Volcanoes are deadly anyway, so imagine a supervolcano. Similar to films such as 2012 kind of played along with that theme, the tectonic plate movements, but it could happen, So that's the natural causes of a bug out scenario. So now we go on to the human. So this could be a war in the country, or even an armed uprising, so like a revolution, such as in Russia in 1917. But many preppers, I guess, theorise that if there's going to be any war in the country, a major war, similar to the Second World War, that sort of scale, there would be a nuclear war, and nothing short of a nuclear bunker will save you for that, and even then you'll be living in that for hundreds of years. But armed uprisings occur, just look at Syria or Libya, they've encountered bloodshed on a huge scale. It's horrific, and obviously, the refugees, theoretically speaking, bugged out of their country to try and escape. But the breakdown of law and order could also happen, such as mass rioting, such as in London in 2011. That caused massive economy problems. The breakdown in society may not always be able to be stopped by the police or the military, and even if the military are called in, they may experience martial law, where the military are allowed to use whatever force they deem necessary to quell the disturbances. This can cause massive problems for people because their supplies might be taken from them. You may be restricted. You may even be executed. In some certain countries, martial law, they would execute prisoners. Again, in Russia, before the revolution, the military were called in. They would execute prisoners instead of just arresting them because they wouldn't have enough room, and they were trained to be ruthless. That's just what they did. Also, another hostile sort of takeover idea would be maybe a militia, or government even, with religious persecution. So that could be the Jews in the Holocaust in 1940 onwards, 1945, and the horrific things the Nazis did to them. That many of them tried to escape. Schindler managed to get lots of them out, but still, there's lots of casualties there. And in Rwanda, in the 1980s, they were religious groups. The Tutsis were killed by the Tutsis. That caused massive impact on them. The whole culture almost was wiped out. Obviously, hopefully that will never happen again in any of our lifetimes. But if you're gonna bug out, these are just a few ideas. I'm just trying to say it's not just the end of the world, the zombie apocalypse, or nuclear war, what people prepare for. That's a problem. A lot of people think, oh, you're a prepper, you're preparing for the end of the world. No, you're preparing to leave your house and try and live, mainly. Some people bug out, maybe from a time of war or a religious persecution, they have nothing. And, it's horrifying as those things are. You should be prepared. It's like insurance. What's the chance of that gonna happen? You're gonna have a horrific collision. You're not sure, but you still have it. I know some countries there's a law, but it's still better to have some form of protection, almost, to fall back on. Even if it's just, a day's worth of food. If you've got a flood, if your house floods, if you live in an active flood zone, you can safely leave that in your car, or even if you just stay upstairs, that you'd still bunker in. So the last, bug out scenario, apocalypse scenario we're going to cover today is if the economy collapses. So, obviously, people know the world is based on the economy. Money controls pretty much everything we do. So if the economy collapses, or if there's a distinct drop in natural resources, so that could be coal, oil, gas, if they drop, then obviously there'd be panic buying in the streets. If the economy collapses, it'll cause a breakdown in society, but that's just a trigger point of the breakdown in society, not just people want change. That is, the economy collapsing or running out of resources is the final thing we'll cover today. And anyway, thank you for watching. Steadman Walking, out.